Hello and welcome to the NTI PodTalk. My name is Dianne and I'm Director of Nutrition Therapy Institute. Join me as I talk to interesting people in the field of health and wellness, food and farming, and anywhere else we find conversations that matter to our community. By listening, you'll learn a little about NTI and a lot about the things and people around you that make a difference for your wellness. Welcome and let's get started. Hi there, welcome everyone. This is Dianne Kaler, the Director of Nutrition Therapy Institute, back with another edition of our PodTalk, the NTI PodTalk. And I want to welcome, I'm very excited today to welcome Mark Kastel, who is Executive Director of OrganicEye, which is an organic industry watchdog. And thank you so much, Mark, for being here. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be with us. So thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to see you, at least virtually, after all these years.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we met many years ago, so it's nice to reconnect. So I want to start off by just asking you, what is OrganicEye? What is the mission of OrganicEye? And kind of talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, you said it in a nutshell. We're an organic industry watchdog. We're basically, we're not a private eye agency, we're public eyes. And who owns the organic label? We do, we all do. And now that it's a $60 billion industry, we had really hoped that organic food would become more accessible back in the 1980s when we were scheming about the commercialization of organic food. And we were too successful. So at the beginning, corporate agribusiness that we were creating an alternative to were taking pot shots at us every opportunity they could. You know, organic food was dangerous. It was a marketing ploy. It was a hoax. And until they figured out that it could be profitable. And so they turned their model to organic, quote, organic food production. I call it organic by substitution. But they purchased, if you go to organiceye.org, our website, organiceye.org, on that, scroll down and you'll find a chart. We worked with Dr. Phil Howard at Michigan State University to produce Who Owns Organics. And you'll see that virtually every major brand, there are some good exceptions, is owned by a major publicly held corporate agribusiness. And doesn't necessarily mean that they're betraying our values, but all too often they are. And so our job is to make sure that there is truly a level playing field, that family scale farmers who produce food that is of superior quality, safety, nutrition are not placed at a competitive disadvantage, and that the marketing partners that they work with are not placed at a competitive disadvantage by imports that are uninspected, don't come up to the standards for US produced crops, or people who are playing fast and loose by the rules. So we're really serious about organic as being a true alternative in the marketplace.
I love that. That's an awesome endeavor, I think. And we'll get a little bit more into that as we go into the discussion. But before we delve into that, can you talk about how you got involved with OrganicEye and organics? Like, you know, you must have a personal interest in maintaining the standards of organics and making sure that it stays
I do.
That way.
Yeah, you probably knew that you could pitch me that question. I started my career in a corporate agribusiness, at least on the technology side, with International Harvester, major tractor and implement company, J.I. Case, FMC, other equipment manufacturers. And back, at least when I was born, not so much working yet, but back, you know, prior to 1950, virtually all farming in America was organic. There were synthetic fertilizers, which sparked the start of the organic movement. The question of whether you could disregard the health of the soil, the tilth, the fertility, and today we know the ecosystem, the microorganisms that break down organic matter into plant nutrients. You know, very wise folks decided earlier in the last century that might not be a good idea for human health. But basically, especially here in Wisconsin, where livestock were part of the mix, most where we recycled nutrients, most farming was organic and family sale farms. But after World War II, where all the synthetic chemicals were developed, herbicides, insecticides, et cetera, we decided we could raise productivity and dominate nature instead of working with it. And obviously, we know that caused a myriad of problems. And one problem it caused was my health took a nosedive, likely due to pesticide poisoning. And I was really lucky enough to see at that time the country's preeminent environmental allergist, an MD named Theron Randolph, who in the 50s, when he suggested environmental factors could injure your health, was branded a quack. By the time I saw him when he was 80 years old, he was footnoted in all the literature. And he suggested, among other things, I had some medication needs, but he prescribed all organic food because while I was healing, we could take the strain off my immune system. And so I got better and better. And over the ensuing decades, I'm suggesting my health has radically improved based on not just what organic didn't have, the agrochemical and drug residues, et cetera, but what it did have. And that was the nutrient density and diversity in nutrition. And not just organic food, but a whole foods diet. My whole foods diet predated that store.
Yeah,
and
right.
So, it's just as expensive, as important as eating organic food is eating whole, unprocessed, real food, not imitation food that bought in the grocery store with a brand on it. So we need to figure out how to cook. That's where you and your allies come in. And so if we do those two things, eat real, unprocessed food as fresh as possible, as local as possible, and have it organically produced so that we are nurturing the ecosystem of the soil and shunning the most dangerous chemicals. We combine those two things. That's a winning combination for our families. It was for me, and for our environment, and economically, every unit of government, from school boards to municipalities to states to feds, we're bankrupting ourselves. Every family, the number one cause for bankruptcy is medical debt. So we have, I like to quote this in some of my speeches, we have the cheapest food in the world, bar none, as a percentage of our income, and the most expensive healthcare by multiples. But, how's that working out? Our levels of chronic disease, infant mortality, premature birth, now lowering expectation of length of life. We're not getting our value. And I would suggest that we all spend more money on food and less money on widgets, and maybe connect spiritually with making that effort to find the best food.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this effort to drive the cost of food down and down and down, depletes the quality of the food, and cheap food has a lot of costs to it, primarily in our health and healthcare and, as you say, bankruptcy and all that kind of stuff.
Right. The contamination of our food, the contamination of the water we drink is tied to our agricultural practices. Air pollution is tied to agricultural practice. And now, there are concerns about the impacts on the climate. So we're killing ourselves, but we can opt out as individuals. We can have influence on our friends and family. And politically, we can have influence on the policymakers. So I'll encourage your viewership and listenership to visit our website at organiceye.org. You could obviously donate if you want to support our work, but we have a free electronic news feed. We'll put you on our press list, the same material that reporters receive around the country. So if you want to stay plugged in on how you can take action to protect the authenticity and safety of your food supply, we would love to have you as an ally.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Okay, so you just said that we all have the opportunity to opt out of this sort of corporate food system, but in order to do that, we need to be educated and understand exactly what it is that we are purchasing. So I have a couple questions for you about the organic standards. I may be very pessimistic, but I kind of think that there are efforts to weaken the standards for organic agricultural products. Am I correct in in that pessimistic belief, or are the standards continuing to get better and better?
I'm afraid you're right. The corporations, we know that they employ a lot of powerful lobbyists. They give money away to politicians, so they have a lot of sway. And when I say organic by substitution, they'd like to farm on the industrial model, which basically means off-farm inputs, and the soil is just to hold the roots. And so we're going to work for the highest level of productivity instead of the highest quality. And it might get safer food. It might not have residues of some of the worst toxic chemicals, but whether it really has that nutrient density and flavor, the flavor profile and nutrients go hand in hand. And so it's a battle between those of us who really care. And I'd say there are really two different organic labels out there. If you go to your local farmers market, if you sign up for a CSA, community supported agriculture, and receive a box of food from a local farm delivered to your neighborhood, if you go to a member-owned food cooperative, natural foods co-op, where they know their farmer suppliers, or I don't know if I mentioned the farmers market on Saturday, you're probably buying food that was harvested 10 hours ago instead of 10 days ago in Mexico or California by these industrial firms. And in the 20 years, and this is almost to the day, the anniversary of my forming the Cornucopia Institute and now OrganicEye, I've virtually never seen fraud on within your local food shed. So that's the way to get great food, add a spiritual connection to the people and place that produces your food. But it's really important for us to band together to protect the organic label, because I had a banana for breakfast. I can't get that from my local food shed. Right. I had rice, I think brown rice for dinner last night. I can't get that in Wisconsin. And I have a few different kinds of nuts every day from Peru or wherever. I need to trust the infrastructure for certification. And so there are definitely weaknesses that we are looking to plug the holes on. And we need the farmers that are OrganicEye members to partner with eaters who really care, because that's where we get political clout. And when that doesn't work, that's where we get marketplace clout. And we have a couple major initiatives coming up where we'll need your help and your viewers' help to have an impact.
Great. Okay, so one other question, and then I want to kind of talk about that organic certification. But one thing that I sort of have a background knowledge of, but not really detailed, is that, a lot of people think that organic means there are no chemical inputs. There's zero chemical inputs. But if you go to the organic certification, requirements and criteria on the USDA website, they do have a list of chemicals or substances that are exempt and can be used in organic production. So do we need to be concerned about that? Are those chemicals things that have some sort of toxic effects, or what's your take on those?
Well, yes, we need to be concerned, and we need to be, that's why we're watchdogs. We need to watch corporate behavior and governmental behavior. So the law was written, the law is good. How it's enforced is the question. So first of all, if if a agricultural product is available in organic form, you must use it to be to label your product organic. You have to use organic wheat in spaghetti. You don't have an option. And if it's not available organically, then it has to be petitioned to be used in organics, basically. There are two rules of thumb. One is that anything that's, quote, natural is automatically approved unless restricted otherwise. Everything that's synthetic is automatically banned unless it's been reviewed by the National Organic Standards Board, a supposedly independent expert body, and approved, basically reviewed for health, safety, environmental impacts, and its appropriateness in organic. So let me give you an example of a natural that's not approved: arsenic. Okay. When I was farming organically 30 plus years ago, you could use a botanically based insecticide called rotenone. That's now banned because we know it has a relationship with Parkinson's disease. Luckily, I wore a respirator and gloves because I didn't even trust the natural insecticides I was using. So there are some natural insecticides. The difference between something like pyrethrum, which again is a botanical, the difference is the active ingredient breaks down very quickly in the environment. So you don't find residues in your food, and it doesn't kill a lot of what we call non-target species out in the garden or the farm. We don't want to kill the pest insect, not all other insects and birds and wildlife. So rotenone's approved. I'm sorry, rotenone's banned. Pyrethrum's approved. Okay. So let me give you an example of a synthetic, which was reviewed for safety. I think it's appropriate. I kind of like organic cupcakes. Well, you can't have an organic cupcake without a leavening agent. There's no such thing as an organic leavening agent. So they reviewed baking powder and found that there's no negative impacts to human health. It's on the list of approved substances. Let me give you two examples of materials we're in the legal process of trying to remove. One is carrageenan. It's derived from seaweed, so it's natural. But it's like a coagulating agent. It keeps, if you have chocolate milk, it keeps chocolate in suspension. It gives some of the, quote, plant-based materials or foods, some of them highly processed. It gives them better mouthfeel. Some of these milks that don't have fat in it makes it feel fatty. The problem is that there's independent research that shows that it's a potent inflammatory agent and causes potentially intestinal cancer. That should not be on the list, but food processors love it. Another item that is on the list is celery powder. Well, that sounds safe enough. Yeah. But there's what they do is they breed celery in a certain manner, and then they plant it conventionally with very high levels of synthetic nitrogen, including right before it's harvested. And what they're trying to do is come up with a alternative to sodium nitrate as a preservative in processed meats. Yeah. And so they use the celery powder, and they use the celery as a nitrogen delivery vehicle. The problem is that in our digestive tract, it turns into nitrosamines that are carcinogenic. And so you can't really make processed meat, bacon, or summer sausage or something unless you keep it frozen without a preservative in it. And so we're trying to get that removed. Now, the industry in the meantime is funding a process that they're trying to come up with a certified organic celery powder. Well, first of all, I don't think they can technically do it because the level of nitrogen that's needed will surpass any kind of natural source that organic farmers could use. But second, Larry, do we want to really come up with a certified organic carcinogen? Are we really making any progress? So that's why we're watching very carefully. And if you go to the OrganicEye website or our Facebook page, you can track some of these materials that you might want to read the ingredients on your food at home to see if you're endangering your children and your family. For the most part, the lists of what's being reviewed are good, but there are exceptions. And again, there's too much in corporate control in terms of who's reviewing these things for it to be entirely trustworthy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. So, I'm glad you came up with those examples because that helps people to understand that. So I want to learn more about organic certifiers. So a lot of times when you see something that says, certified organic, and then it'll give the name of the certifying agency that did that certification. So how do they fit into the certification process? Are they sort of sub-agencies of the USDA? Are they private? Like, what's that relationship?
They're
there?
both.
Okay.
Well,
all right.
back when I was certified, prior to the USDA and prior to the law that said if you use the organic word, you must be certified. It was voluntary. And we did it because we believed. We wanted to have a way to assure consumers of the integrity of what we were doing as farmers. And we asked, as the old adage goes, the old axiom, be careful what you ask for. You might actually get it. So we lobbied in the 1980s for Congress to pass the Organic Foods Production Act, which they did as part of the 1990 Farm Bill. And that gave the USDA the authority to not certify farmers. They basically certify the certifiers. So many of those original nonprofits that have now grown into multi-million-dollar corporations certifying multi-billion-dollar agribusinesses, many of those are now still around. There are others that have formed strictly for-profit motivation. And now we have to watch them too. So one of our current campaigns is to out the bad actors in certification. So you've got some of the largest certifiers certifying hydroponic farming, which means grown indoors in giant industrial greenhouses without soil, and in liquid fertilizers containing, let's say, for nitrogen, conventional soybean meal is the nutrition for our food. That's not organic.
Yeah.
We have not 50 or 100 cows living on family farms that know the owners. The cows might have names, not numbers. The children might bottle feed the calves from birth. They're very connected. Now we have some dairies with not 1,000 cows, not 3,000 cows, not 10,000 cows. There's one with 20,000 cows certified organic. And they're milking not twice a day, moving in and out from pasture, which is challenging enough for real organic farmers. They're milking some of them 3 and 4 times a day and having us to believe, the certifiers are believing that they're moving them out to pasture. I believe that's what comes out the back end of the male cattle of the species. So so now we are outing some of the bad certifiers. We're encouraging farmers to switch to certifiers that respect the spirit and letter of the law and that share our values. And soon we will shift to helping or educate consumers, because the subversive part to this is that by law, if you have a package, let's say it's yogurt, that says it's organic on the front, you have to designate who the third-party certifier is on the label by law. So we will eventually educate consumers which brands they can trust. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the less trustworthy certifiers, we're not necessarily going to condemn every brand they certify, but you can't use the certifier label as your Cliff Notes version of doing your food research. Okay. And so we hope that some of the most responsible farmers and processor marketers will switch to the heroes in certification. So we're bypassing the USDA. There shouldn't be this problem. Congress charged the USDA with coming up with uniform standards. Well, some certifiers won't certify hydroponics because The law says, I'm paraphrasing, as a farmer, before you become certified, you must illustrate in your organic systems plan how you are going to maintain or improve soil fertility. How do you maintain or improve soil fertility without soil? You know, it's just not legal. And I've illustrated part of the fallacy of these livestock factories. So we have good certifiers and we have bad actors. And so we're hoping to use this as a wedge to disturb the status quo in organics. And you can imagine, I'm not the most popular guy in some circles.
Yeah. Well, you know, I didn't realize that farmers are the ones who choose their certifier. I thought it was like, you know, if you're in this region, you get this certifier. So that's good information. And that's helpful because, you know, consumers create demand for farmers' products. Farmers are going to hopefully make decisions that is going to improve or increase the consumer purchase of their products.
There's an inherent conflict of interest. If you pay me $10,000 to come to your house and bless your kitchen and tell everybody that you have nothing but high integrity materials or ingredients that you're using in the dinner you're going to make for your guests tonight, how objective am I going to be? Well, you know, some of these certifiers are true believers. The antidote that was built into the organic law is the USDA certifies the certifiers. They audit them to make sure they're applying the law. They're just unfortunately not doing a very good job of it.
Yeah.
And then if you go to our website and click on news, organiceye.org, and then choose news option and OrganicEye News, you'll see our current campaign on certifiers. Our poster child is CCOF, the largest certifier. Not only do they take a lot of money from big corporate agribusinesses like Driscoll's, the giant berry company, or Grimway Farms, 60,000 acres of organic vegetable production. You don't know Grimway, but you might know Cal Organics or Bunny Love.
Yeah.
So they're paying many thousands of dollars to CCOF for certification. But in addition to that, CCOF and their affiliates are accepting donations from their they call them clients. So they've, just in a 5-year period that we looked at, Grimway and Driscoll's contribute about $150,000 in either donations to sponsor their conferences or buying advertising in their magazine. And we think that's patently illegal, and we've filed a legal complaint with the USDA illustrating this conflict. That's why, you know, it's sad, but that's why our work is needed at OrganicEye, because nobody was really focusing on this until we kind of blew the whistle on them.
Interesting. Okay. I have another question to ask that I should have asked earlier, but in terms of the USDA and their oversight of the National Organic Program, they, you know, they talk about, they talk a good yarn about how much they do, what the steps they take to have this oversight in organics and make sure that it's meeting the highest standards and all this stuff. And they had, even in March of last year, they announced new measures to strengthen their oversight and enforcement of organics. Is this like, are they actually doing things to strengthen organics? Like, is it actually progress, or is it just kind of ear candy to make us, I don't know.
Well, it's a mix.
Okay.
You know, some of this rulemaking is good. Some of it is long overdue. But the biggest deficit has been in enforcement.
Okay.
When we have brought legal complaints to their attention, sometimes working with the FBI, sometimes we've nailed massive fraud. But all too often, they give companies a slap on the wrist. No fines, no penalties. They're allowed to continue to operate. And I don't mean outright fraud where you're labeling conventional food as organic. I mean where they're not grazing their animals where the law says they're supposed to, or they're highly deficient in some other area that really defines organic. It's very hard for them to get in trouble. And the USDA, instead of like other law enforcement agencies holding a press conference or issuing a press release saying Acme food business has been fined because they were deceiving their customers and abusing the goodwill of or the organic label. Instead, it's almost all done in secret, and it's all negotiated away. You know, well, we never want to have a conflict in court, so we'll just let them off for pennies on the dollar. And so, so we need to really be careful. There was a big hullabaloo about the great animal welfare rules that they enacted last year. Well, this came about in part because of my work over the last 20 years, blowing the whistle on organic poultry production, eggs and broilers, where you could have 200,000 birds in a building with a teeny little porch, screened-in porch where they could go, quote, outdoors, because outdoors is required by law. Mm-hmm. Well, even if you and I stipulated that screened porch with a concrete floor and a ceiling and walls was outdoors, and you wouldn't get me to do that, but if you and I agreed on that, since the word all organic animals must have access to the outdoors, if that area could only hold 1 to 3% of the birds, I would suggest 98% have no access to the outdoors. So they changed that. No more porches. Well, after well over a decade of agitating, and now they're going to be forced to go outside. They're required to have a minimum of about 2 square feet per bird. 2 square feet outdoors. Let me give you a comparison. Organic Valley, which is a member-owned cooperative, requires their farmers, and they don't have 20,000 birds or 200,000. They might have 5 or 10,000 birds in a building. They're required to have 5 square feet, okay, and a certain amount of doors. Mm-hmm. In the European Union, to be qualified as organic, you can't have more than 3,000 birds in a building, and you must provide 43 square feet outdoors for each bird, not 2 square feet. Right. In the US, some humane labels, the best ones, some humane labels are corporate BS, but the best ones require 108 square feet to be called pastured. So 2 square feet, no, that's no big victory. It's a giveaway to members of the lobby group, the Organic Trade Association. So everybody cheered about that, and then they went home, except for OrganicEye. We're not cheering, and we're not going home yet. Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, that's good information again for people to be able to make informed decisions. So you have told us so many interesting things and so many things that can help us make better decisions, but you just named a couple of things that as consumers, we may not understand. We may just believe that by buying something labeled organic, we're making the right decision. So with this growing demand for organics, and I am among those who demands organics and demands the standards of organics, how can consumers participate in the organic system in a meaningful way that they're not contributing to the degradation of the standards? Like, how can we know? Because we have to rely on the labels. Are there tips and tricks when we're shopping in the grocery store? Because, yes, shopping at farmers markets or shopping at co-ops, that's great. But what if we don't have access to those? Or what if it's the middle of winter? Right. So what are some tips and tricks that we can? Okay. Well, excuse me. So the good news, well, first of all, I really encourage everybody to be engaged politically, or in the marketplace, and go to organiceye.org to get empowered. And we answer questions too on our website. The good news is, I talked about local food, regional food being high integrity and better of quality. And if we eat more in season, I still have apples in my refrigerator from, like a third of my refrigerator was apples in the fall, and it's getting down there but I'm still eating from my local food shed. I have tons of parsnips and lots of winter squash that I love. I never eat that out of season because by the end of when spring comes, I've had enough. But carrots and parsnips I mentioned, and rutabagas, and what am I missing? Turnips and beets, and we could eat a roast chicken filled with root crops, and it's good for umpteen meals and for a week of leftovers. My favorite food, leftovers.
Yeah.
And so I'm still eating in my local food shed. Now I buy some greens that are coming from California too.
Mm-hmm.
So eating as locally as you can. And then I would say, be particular. So I'm going to compete with your webinar, webcast, and podcast. If you go to organiceye.org, and this time click on resources, you'll see a series called Kastel's Kitchen, starring Mark Kastel.
All right.
And it's really disclosing my secrets of how I buy food over the past 20 years. So there's a show just on yogurt, as an example. There's a show, I think, on vegetables. There's a show on eggs. And I name names, I name brands. And there are some exemplary brands that are regional or even nationally distributed. And I'll tell you to go to the yogurt. At least in the eastern half of the US, 7 Stars yogurt is my backup. Now, I buy fresh, unpasteurized milk from a friend and neighbor. It's great milk. It's from a colored breed, Normandy cows, not Holstein, so it's very rich. And I get it in glass bottles, which is great. And it's certified organic, which is great. So I have some of the best milk around. And I make really nice yogurt. And it's so easy. In fact, I talk about this in the yogurt Kastel's Kitchen edition, but on the FAQs on our website, I have my recipe for my yogurt, or somewhere on there, so you can use the search function. But I buy 7 Stars when I don't get any. What does that have in there? Does it have carrageenan? No. Does it have milk powder? No. Does it have conventional pectin? No. It has milk and a culture. That's all. It's beautiful yogurt. And you can get that widely. And so I named some brands. Let me tell you, in terms of the pantry, and there's an episode on this. I'll name 2 brands, 3 brands that are my favorite poster children for the good guys. Eden Foods. It's owned by a guy named Michael Potter in Clinton, Michigan. And when I was in the farm equipment business, I was selling tractors and implements to his suppliers, who were growing the first food grade soybeans in the United States. Before that, believe it or not, we were buying from Japan, a country that grows more soybeans than any other country. But he contracts directly with farmers for his pinto beans or his black beans, or many of the ingredients that they buy. And then they're a very diversified grocer. And he doesn't contract for production in what's called a co-packer. He makes his own in his own factories, pasta and canned beans and other things. So that's a really fine, it's a big multi-million-dollar corporation, but still independently owned and proving you can be big without giving up your values. Nature's Path, a big cereal and granola maker, owned by the families that started them. Dr. Bronner's, all the soap in my house at every sink is their baby bar soap. And I use their toothpaste. No carrageenan in the toothpaste. You'll find that in other natural toothpastes. They use certified organic coconut oil and no carrageenan. And the oral mucosa is the beginning of our digestive tract. So if you don't, whether it's soap or toothpaste, whatever you put on your body is going to be in your bloodstream. So you need to be a careful consumer. I use vinegar as my main cleaning agent at home. And those are really the only kind of soap products I use. Coconut oil is naturally antifungal, antibacterial. It makes it fantastic. Just a little dab of it, underarm deodorant, better than any natural deodorant I found at like a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
So if you tune into Kastel's Kitchen, I will share some of these secrets that I want everybody to know. And, the good news is in the United States, the reason that almost every organic farmer is truly certified organic is not because of the USDA, not because of their agent, the certifier. It's because they're honest and they believe in what they're doing. That's the majority of the farmers. I wish I could say all of them. And I wish some of the largest would visit their smaller family farms and learn a few things. But until then, we have to band together. I say, we're all organic watchdogs.
Mhm.
And we get, anytime people have intelligence, we want to know about it. If you have concerns about something that might not be organic, might not be labeled right. Today I was on the phone with somebody who's in the produce business talking about apple storage. So we want both experts and eaters, when they see something wrong, say something, and come to us in full confidence. We have an 800 tip line, 800 iTips, I think is what the number is. You'll have to look that up on our website. Yeah. Or we have a special page for, and you can't be anonymous, but we will protect your identity. And we're all in this together. We own the organic label.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great. I love your Kastel's Kitchen. I'm going to take a look at that. And I also get milk from a local farmer and make my own yogurt. So
there you go. You're my competitor.
Yeah.
No,
yeah, right.
It's great. It's just the easiest thing. I don't know how you do it, but it is so easy to make.
It is very, yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, you have given us so much information to empower us to be more informed consumers, to actually provide benefit to the movement rather than, continue or propel a downward decline. So I really appreciate that. So you've mentioned your website a couple of times, but just one more time. And then also, do you guys do social media? Where else should people
we
look
do?
for
But
you?
before we sign off, I want to just say, I'm going to use this. I did this in one of the Kastel's Kitchen, but there's a food pyramid. So the top might be certified organic. I'm sorry, the bottom might be certified. The floor, don't buy anything underneath that. But the pinnacle would be growing your own.
Yes.
We have a saying here in Wisconsin: don't go out to pick the sweet corn until the water is already boiling on the stove in your kitchen. If you want flavor and freshness and safety and a great experience for your family, especially your children, grow your own. Yeah. The next one down from that is a connection to your community. Sign up for a CSA. So you'll be part owner for a farm for a season. They have open houses. They have opportunities to engage with the farmers and your community members. And they'll deliver you a box of fresh food once a week into your neighborhood or once every other week. And then wonderful independently owned natural food stores and cooperatively owned food stores where the owners and managers know the farmers, can do the investigative work for you, can make sure that you have the freshest food where you're economically contributing to your neighborhood. That would be the next step. So really, certified organic, that's just the start. And then cook, buy whole foods and cook. The simplest food, again, Kastel's Kitchen has some tips, and I know you have a myriad of tips, but some food is just so easy to make, and make a bunch of extras so you can have leftovers for the balance of the week. And maybe you can't do that every night. Maybe you're going to go to a restaurant some night, or buy something in the store that might be somewhat processed, but these highly processed foods are dead food in terms of nutrition. They don't taste very good. And then they have to add all kinds of additives to either preserve them or to add back in some kind of flavor. And most of those are dangerous. So that's my rave out at the end here.
I love it.
Awesome. To find us, again, OrganicEye, organic, EYE, one word, .org, or you can find us on Facebook, OrganicEye. We do have a Twitter feed. We don't use it very much. And LinkedIn, and I can't remember what else, but I'm an old guy. So we're not highly engaged in all the other social media. But between Facebook and our, which we post some things that we don't have on our website, and our website, you'll be pretty engaged with us.
That's great. Yeah, and there's so many resources on your website too, so that's really helpful.
Thank
All
you.
right, well, Mark, it has been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today. I truly appreciate it, and I know our listeners will as well. So thank you.
Well, thanks for your kind words and talking about some of these issues that are near and dear to my heart, and continue your wonderful work. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Hi, Dianne Kaler here again. If you found this conversation interesting and haven't already become a student at NTI, check us out at ntischool.com. We hope to see you soon.